material em vídeo. A ideia é fazer uma fala, se vocês quiserem perguntar, se eles quiserem perguntar, fazer alguma coisa assim curta, não mais do que 40, 60 minutos, mas no sentido não de ter uma resposta, mas talvez a gente ter uma última oportunidade de uma conversa, digamos, mais informal com ele. Então eu vou convidá-los para sentar e Bishop começa a brincadeira.
Yara, you want us up here?
Por favor, vamos. Por favor. Brian, please.
So, thank you everyone for coming. Sorry I have no more Portuguese from yesterday. I used it all. So, Yara has asked us to try and come up with one question to finish the seminar. So, what I've tried to do is come up with one comment and also a question for everyone. So, I think we've been talking, and one thing that I think what Yara's done is fantastic, but we've done the easy part, which is to sit around and to talk and to exchange some ideas. And so I've been thinking about where do we go from here. And I don't know if it's a good idea, and maybe it's my physiological background, but I just started to thinking about whether we can use the model that I showed yesterday to maybe to guide us. I don't think we can use the exact model, but we can maybe modify it. You can't see that very well. So I think the first thing is that we need to decide what our question is or what our problem is. And I think we've raised lots of different questions these few days. So we've talked a little bit about the name, physical education, human movement science, kinesiology, etc. So is that important? We've talked about whether it's good to go from more of a physical education to more of a science-based. Is there a risk that we're going to lose some of the socio-cultural elements if we go more to hard science-based? Howard talked about on the first day whether we need some sort of dogma. Same with Benoit's talking about whether we have a uniting theme, and I think we do. I think it's movement, but there's lots of questions in there, and so I think it's the perfect place to start the discussion is to throw up lots of questions. But if we're going to go forward, I think we need to decide what is our key question. What is the key problem that we're trying to solve here? We haven't got there yet, but that's okay. That's what the discussion's about. I think the second part is we need some descriptive research, and Brian gave some great examples, I think, describing the evolution of from physical education to human movement, but obviously it's somewhat anecdotal. Benoit gave us some really good descriptive research, or not research, descriptive analysis of different names, different courses. So I think we need to expand that, and that would be, to be done in a more academic setting, maybe publish something, I don't know, but to go through and to describe the evolution of the field, I think that would be important. the predictors of performance, etc., that's obviously not going to happen. But I think we maybe need to do some sort of scientific analysis after that. So what have other fields done? How has medicine evolved? How has biology evolved? Maybe other fields. I think nursing is maybe a good example of a professional field. What started out as a profession, which has now evolved in nursing science. So I think, you know, what I'm trying to say is just sitting around and talking isn't going to solve this issue. We need to get in and do some more detailed analysis. I think we also need to look at the barriers to uptake. And so what is it that is, and maybe not only barriers, but enablers. So what is causing this change? And some of Andrew's talk, David's talk, is, okay, what is the context that is driving some of these changes? And I think we need to understand those if we're going to try and preserve some of the things that we feel are important. So to give you an example, when I spoke yesterday, it seems to be that money is driving lots of these changes. So we need to understand that. So I think, for example, if we want to argue that sociology is very important, that pedagogy is very important, we probably need to frame that in some sort of financial aspect. So we have to say that, not just say that sociology is important, but to say that this will produce better graduates, etc. And then obviously the final step is how we're going to implement this. So we've come up with some good ideas. How are we going to talk to the Brazilian government? How are we going to convince them to keep sociology, to keep the name physical education, etc. So I guess I'm not saying that that is a perfect model, but I think from here the next step is to try and have a plan and to work through this. I think just the very last thing that I tried to emphasize yesterday is that I think it's very important that we don't just talk about physical education and kinesiology in isolation. So when we're doing our discussions, we need to look at what other professions, what other courses have done. I think because we can learn from that. So I think that's important that we don't just talk about kinesiology. So I'll just go back. So as I said, that's just an idea, and it's probably also a question for everyone here and out in the audience is, where do we go from here? We've had some excellent discussion, but where do we go from here? So it's open to everybody.
Well, just to follow up, the first thing I wrote before David started was, where do we go from here? Which is how you ended. And I think, to me, that's the crucial question. But what I'm still yet to... I'd like to throw out a question is, for what purpose are we doing this? Well, for what purpose are we doing physical education or kinesiology? We looked at the Wikipedia description. Was it Wikipedia? Yeah. Description of it, and it was poor, but there was no sense of purpose, aims, objectives. And I think a lot of the times we forget what those are. We haven't really evaluated why we're doing what we're doing. It's why we do sports studies, why we do elite sports studies, and why there's a division between that and health and exercise and activities of daily living. You know, we very rarely reflexively look upon our own actions and our own practices to think about the broader impact that they do or don't have. And I'm still questioning, if you like, that with regard to physical education. We take it for granted that it's a panacea for good. Well, it could be, but not necessarily. If we don't do it correctly and think about what social ills or what social problems it can address and how, I still think we are rather aimless in how we've structured it. So I guess, again, I would say, as with David, how do we, first we have to have a vision of what the field can be, and that's, I think, this is initiating that start. But how do we help realise what that vision is? And what are the barriers to realising it? And I would say that a big barrier is we're probably preaching to the converted here. We all agree that something needs to be done. We're not the problem. It's outside that door is the problem, convincing other people of the value of what we want to do once we've decided what it is, and making sure that they're on board and they help realise the visions that we have. Be it deans, vice provosts, whatever it might be, they need to, and we need to do a better job perhaps of convincing them of the value socially and not just economically of what we do. That's it then. I want a hot dog again.
You should have gone to lunch with me.
Yeah.
I'm not going to take 45 minutes.
Let's give you the mic.
To follow up on what Davis just said, yeah, we need to have a vision for the future. Before we start getting involved in complicated issues like that, the question I would like to pose: why do you want to change the name? Why, in this instance, do you want to get rid of the label physical education and substitute something else for it, such as kinesiology or movement science or movement sciences? Isn't physical education good enough? Why is it you want to do it? Now, one of the things I've tried to say is don't do it because you think you're getting a sexier title. You're in movement sciences. It's going to really sell well. It might attract more attention to funding bodies of people who are physicists who's sitting on a research council funding body who remembers horrible times at school doing PE in the gym or in the middle of a playing field doing rugby or football with the snow swirling around him in the middle of winter, and thinks, oh my God, I'll never fund anybody from physical education at all. And you're making up joking, but I think there's an element of truth in it. So, seriously think, why do we want to do it? And I think we have had some answers here. Maybe they haven't been explicit enough. Other thing that I want to say is that for me, if I'm talking about human science or sciences, I'm usually talking the plural, because I don't believe there's such a thing as human movement science. As I said when I made, well, I used the distinction made by Carl Antin, the English zoologist, between restricted and unrestricted science. Then clearly, what we're calling, what I would call human movement sciences, is unrestricted. It goes all over the place to try and link up with other disciplines. So it's by nature, at its very heart, it is multidisciplinary. It has to be. Where do we go from multidisciplinary? Because interdisciplinary is really what you should be aiming for. And then we have to ask the question, what does it mean when something is interdisciplinary? When we're working on a project that is truly interdisciplinary and not multidisciplinary. Now, I have experience of both. I've worked in a multidisciplinary project and I've worked with another class in Amsterdam that was truly interdisciplinary. What was the difference in my personal experience? The difference was that we had a sort of scientific Esperanto, a language with which I could communicate with a physicist or an engineer. Sociologists, I'm afraid, didn't figure, David, in that. That was just the fickle situation in Amsterdam. the time. So having that was that sort of language. Now, what was that language based on? Well, surprisingly, it was the use of metaphors to get our ideas across. Simple metaphors. So you have the metaphor of the brain as a computer. Everybody knows about that. But there are all sorts of metaphors that you can use. And it's the best way of communicating with people from other disciplines. And then you draw them in. We have this problem. I want to look at the development of reaching, grasping in infants. Okay, we think of a study, we think of experiments we can do to try and tease out the mechanisms, not just the processes. How do we go about it? And I sit down with a biomechanist in this instance, and we plot and we plan. He knows my theoretical background, he knows the question and answer. I understand, to the best of my ability, but I really do my best to understand what the biomechanics is all about. And we weld together these two quite disparate personalities in some respects in terms of training, who are working on a single goal. In multidisciplinary researchers, I was involved in another university in the Netherlands, Groningen. That was a neurologist, there was also a physicist, there were a couple of psychologists, there was a nurse, and we were working with children who were at risk for acquiring cerebral palsy, spasticity. And we all worked separately in the project. They did, the neurologist did his little bit of stuff, and I did mine with observation of spontaneous movements and the influence, and we never really worked together. If we came to a meeting like this, and he would present his paper, and I would present mine, we were from the same stable, as it were, but we'd never really talked to her, we'd never worked closely together the way I've just described between myself and the biomechanics. It was truly interdisciplinary. So that would be multidisciplinary. We could tackle a problem, but not together, if you understand. So I think interdisciplinarity is really a key factor, and embedding that in what I talked about right at the very end of my talk, in where another strength of human movement sciences is in translational research. It's become very popular recently to talk about translational research. So it's going from, I bore this basic versus applied distinction. It's going from fundamental research, and then looking for applications and other people applying them. We have patient trials, in a clinical situation, it comes back to your guy in the proverbial white coat in the laboratory, and he looks at what's happened with the trials. Does my theory, does my setup, do my ideas need altering in any way? And you have this circle of causality, if you like. So, I think I've just about exhausted what I can say. So, there is, if anybody is interested in what the notion of interdisciplinarity is about, and would like an introduction to it, I have got a chapter. It took me 2 years to write it because I thought I understood what interdisciplinary research was about. So I started writing this chapter for Encyclopedia of Child Development, actually. And it was one of the introductory chapters because I wanted to make that encyclopedia of child and truly interdisciplinary. Didn't quite work so well because, I don't know, it didn't quite work, but I wrote a chapter on interdisciplinarity. If you'd like the references I've given to you, you can see 2 years of sweated labour to produce that. And I was reasonably satisfied at the end, but it wasn't the ultimate story.
Okay. Can we put it on the Ephysis website, the chapter?
Yes, of course.
Yeah, but it's here on the slide.
So you want to download it?
Yeah, sure. Right. Is that enough, Yara?
Yeah, of course. Thank you very much.
Oh.
Yeah, I think Harry was next.
I don't think I need the microphone.
Give it a try. You might talk.
No, it would scare me. It would scare me. I like to keep things simple. So I have, I think, 4 words that describes what we should be doing. The first word is why. The second word is how. The third word is effects with an E. And then the fourth word is time. That's what we should be doing. Why people move, how people move, the effects of movement, and then how things change. That's time. That's what we should all be doing in terms of what our undergraduates need to know about. So when they leave and have their degree, they then can talk to a parent at the right level of analysis and explain and answer those 4 words, divided. And that's all we need to do. Obviously, that's not all we need to do, but I want to start very simply to give ourselves what I would call a searchlight to see through, and then the complications can come later. So, I know the problem. I have my answer, I think, and I think that would give us a central dogma. Those 4 things. And if I'm correct about that, and obviously I don't understand Portuguese, but I think then physical education and science are completely compatible with each other. And which, of course, I think is a disagreement to what was said this morning. So, I'm finished.
Thank you very much.
That's it?
That's it?
Yeah, well, yeah, that's it. That's it. That's it.
Okay, I will be very short myself. I think I basically wanted to make similar points. So I made them some of them in my talk. The necessity of transdisciplinary research to preserve and to define what kinesiology is and what we should be, what we should do. There are 2 points that I'm worrying about in this kinesiology business, and I'm very happy with this week, not only the talks and the interaction that we had, but we've been spending 1 week together. I mean, when I say together, it's with the exception between midnight and 7 o'clock, where we were doing our own sleeping time. We've been spending days and parts of nights together talking about these issues, and it suddenly emerged over the few days to me now very important things. So one is so we have natural science, what we call biodynamics, in your triangle, and social sciences, cultural sciences, and David was kind of pushing very hard the fact that social sciences in kinesiology, which I go this part of kinesiology, is underrepresented, is kind of the tendency to, because of the economical constraints, because of the way the society is doing, is underrepresented and tend to disappear in some places and departments. And I completely agree, I think this is the case. Well, my point is that this problem is also the problem of natural sciences. That is, if the biodynamics do not pay attention to what's happening to the social science part in kinesiology, then the biodynamics people are going to be in trouble. So I think it's also the business of the natural science people to be very careful of that issue. And if our essence is, if our heart is in multidisciplinary and transdisciplinary, we need to be transdisciplinary with someone. And if that someone is not there anymore, then we are not there anymore either. So the field of kinesiology needs to rely on equilibrium and balance foundations, and social sciences is one of them. And if social sciences is not there anymore, then natural science is not there anymore. And if it is the case, then if social sciences disappear from the kinesiology program, which is happening in many places, then I'm going to go to neuroscience. And my faculty is not going to be a kinesiology faculty anymore. It's going to be a faculty of neuroscience, physiology, health, or something else. So it is the business of natural science people to, take care of that issue, and not only of people like David. So that's point number one. And point number two, to be pragmatic, and this may be part of the next Ephysis agenda, we had a few discussions this week, is to concretely find 2 or 3 projects that we can do together among us that are really the way we want kinesiology to be. So I presented some funny slides yesterday, about movement signatures of happiness. The fact that there are ways to integrate movement, let's say biomechanics if you want, and culture together. That's one example among many others. Maybe we can take one of these and try to do a little project. It can be a student project, it can be a master project between the Faculty of Education in Sao Paulo and the University of Maryland, and Montpellier and Victoria. Just different universities, we take 1 or 2 little projects like this one, simple projects, and we try to bridge very modestly, we try to bridge some gaps in between social sciences and biomechanics, neuroscience, or whatever. And there are easy ways to do that. It's not, it's not going to the moon. So if we do this thing modestly but concretely in 1 or 2 projects in that group, I think we can go. It can be the basis for meeting again, and it can be the basis for going somewhere together.
Eu entendi pouco do que foi colocado, de qualquer forma, e queria reagir a algumas coisas. Volto a falar que uma questão central para nós é discutir o sentido da prática científica nesse campo. Por exemplo, a chamada interdisciplinaridade, o meu entendimento, só faz sentido e só se constitui efetivamente no momento que você tem uma problemática que se diferencia das problemáticas que podem ser respondidas monodisciplinarmente.
Edson, você pode traduzir para mim?
Posso.
Sim.
Eu queria usar um pouco a seguinte figura. Nós estamos numa escola de educação física. E nós dissemos o seguinte: em determinado momento nós vamos precisar de alguém que faça estudos na nossa escola de fisiologia, de sociologia, de psicologia e assim por diante. Agora, chamar essas pessoas para o campo da educação física, para trabalhar interdisciplinarmente, só faz sentido se nós tivermos uma problemática que possa articulá-los. Nós temos que ter uma problemática própria. E isso, no meu entendimento, pode ser identificado a partir da tradição, né, daquilo que justificou socialmente a criação dessa escola. Essa escola foi criada, ela surgiu em função de um processo social que vai gerar a necessidade de construir essa escola e formar professores e fazer pesquisa aqui. Se nós não nos remontarmos a esse, eu diria assim, arco e começo, nós vamos construir a ciência a partir do teto. Por isso que eu disse, é uma ciência, a cinesiologia para mim é uma ciência sem objeto. A interdisciplinaridade, o problema da interdisciplinaridade não é se conseguir uma linguagem como um Esperanto, né? É uma problemática teórica que tem que ser comum. Né? A unidade da ciência, a interdisciplinaridade só se daria a partir de uma problemática, né? Que não poderia ser respondida sem o aporte Que é, no meu entendimento, uma característica da problemática ancorada na tradição da educação física.
Como na escolha do time brasileiro, acho que tem vários tradutores aqui também, né? Então, se eu fizer se eu cometer algum equívoco, vocês me ajudem. Tá? Well, what Walter is saying that he is concerned with the discussion of the meaning of the scientific practice in our field, physical education. His is
Even the need of, he uses the need of.
the needs.
Yeah.
They need to discuss the scientific practice of this field. Then he thinks that interdisciplinarity makes sense once not only having a scientific Esperanto, but he thinks also that we need to have a problematic.
Common problem? No, just problem.
We need to have common problems. We need to have a theoretical base, we need to share a theoretical base, and above all, he says, we in the physical education, we need to articulate. If we bring people from different areas, from different disciplines, we have to articulate the effort of each one from the tradition of physical education. And he mentions that the very historical process that led to the creation of, for instance, of this school. What were the reasons to create a school of physical education? This school, or physical education in Brazil. He thinks from this tradition we might start to get a feeling about what are these common problems, and this will, according to Walter, will give us a base to start this interdisciplinarity effort. So, and he thinks that kinesiology at this moment, as he sees, doesn't have this.
Yes, of course.
I don't need the mic. Walter, and through Edson to me, said what I was trying to say the other night just much more eloquently than I ever did. But that captures what the message that I was trying to get across on Tuesday evening. Let me add a question to try to get across that message. If we were studying literature, so Shakespeare, Chaucer, Cervantes, no one would think of sticking an electrode in someone's skull to find out what the brain was doing when Cervantes was writing, or when someone was reading Cervantes. People who study literature understand exactly where they need to be to understand literature. If we were understanding literature, we would stick the electrode in someone's head to understand Cervantes, or we would do transmagnetic cranial stimulation to see how we could disrupt the understanding of Cervantes. And when we did all that eloquent work, we still would know nothing about Cervantes because it's on the wrong level of analysis. And I think what was trying to be said here can be said in this way, that we need to agree upon the proper level of description or analysis in order to find our common principles. So in my little thought experiment, we know, I would guess, that no one who's getting a PhD in literature is going to be doing brain recordings of people reading Cervantes. So, but we blindly switch levels of analysis without really thinking about what it means. And if that's true, then yes, the level of analysis for physical education is different than the level of analysis for kinesiology. And I wish I could have said it as eloquently and even in Portuguese as we just said before.
But how isn't there an assumption then that there's a singular level of analysis? But an optimal level of analysis?
I'd use the word a mean level of analysis, not a singular per se, but
he said to agree upon.
to agree upon.
But I mean, I think
He's not saying that
personally,
it is one level.
I mean, I think that you're used to an example of literature, which is an established traditional field. A transdisciplinary approach to literature may engage the neuroscientist with the English professor. I mean, that may be a kind of the way forward, rather than being something that, yeah, they wouldn't do now, but maybe something they should do.
I think also, I mean, that example is interesting, but there seemed to be a difference between appreciation and understanding. So what you seem to be talking about was appreciation of literature.
No.
But if I wanted to understand how someone reads, how someone processes words on a page, that's a different level of analysis when you would stick an electrode.
But that's not literature. Okay, so
No, exactly.
right, and I have many friends who are English professors, and they know what it means to understand literature, and it's not just describing it. And reading is not part of it. I mean, how the eyes move when you're reading the page is a different question than understanding literature.
So what do you think the mean level of analysis is for kinesiology?
Behavior, not the motor units, not the motor neurons, behavior that I can basically see pretty well with my eyes. And now, granted, people will go below and above that, but I think that should be we need to have that first before we go other places.
Well, I mean, I guess I'm thinking that it's the primary empirical site. So, I mean, I wouldn't disagree with that, funny enough. No, I agree. I mean, if we go above and beyond, in terms of the metaphor I used from that glass one was I'm swimming along on the current, so you go above the water and below the water, macro and micro analysis of embodiment. No, I don't have a problem with that at all.
But I think, if I understood correctly, Walter, and using Brian's words, I think the criticism of Walter is that everything we have done so far, it's multidisciplinary science in human movement. And if that is it, there is no reason to bring a guy from sociology to here, a guy from physiology to here, a guy from physics to here, to have this physical education department, because this is multidisciplinary, there is no connection. So his criticism is that we don't, in his words, if you understand, we don't need this kind of science in physical education. We don't want that. So there is no reason for this kind of science. And so I'm not sure if I understand okay, let's not have nothing like that. We do not want physiology or anything, because this is not physical education. Physical education is really interdisciplinary. Or if he's proposing, okay guys, before changing the name or discussing the field, we should start doing something interdisciplinary rather than multidisciplinary. See his point is that it could be as well in the physiology department. You don't need to be in the physical education and so on. He could point to each one where you should go. I think this is his criticism.
So who would be in the physical education department?
Walter, eu tô até provocando eles mais no sentido de, eu falei, olha, eu tentei usar as definições do Brian em termos de interdisciplinar e multidisciplinar para ficar numa linguagem mais comum. Então, o que eu entendi do seu argumento, olha, o que se faz aqui, ou o que tem feito em educação física, é multidisciplinar. Quer dizer, cada um vem aqui, não tem interação. Então, isso a gente não precisa, porque isso não é educação física, cada um fazer. Então, eu falei, então, eu mandei todo mundo embora, David para fisiologia, neuroscience, sociologia, e aí está perguntando, então, quem vai ficar, então, na educação física? Foi a pergunta, quem fica? Eu não sei. Não.
Veja só.
I don't know.
Tem que se entender o processo. Né? Quer dizer, primeiro que, vamos dizer assim, você tem que colocar que o sentido deles estarem aqui vem da educação física. Essa é a primeira coisa. E a educação física tem uma tradição. Ou seja, ela tem uma tradição no sentido que ela foi fundada, ela foi constituída a partir de determinadas necessidades sociais. Então, são essas necessidades sociais, essa função social dela é que tem que dizer se eles são importantes aqui ou não.
Mas,
não pode ser a sociologia que diz nós somos importantes para você, a partir dos nossos problemas. Nós é que temos que dizer assim, nós temos um problema para vocês.
Mas quem é nós? Porque
nós, a educação física, a tradição. Não, a tradição da educação física.
Mas a tradição tem que estar em alguém, não existe a tradição, digo...
Mas claro que está em alguém, as pessoas que fazem a educação física, que fazem a intervenção na educação física.
A prática pedagógica.
Ok.
Estamos falando.
The person do the pedagogical practices are physical education.
Por isso, as problemáticas, porque a pergunta é a seguinte, muito bem, nós temos, por exemplo, mas eu tenho um problema já para ser resolvido, que exige, pô, mas quem é você? Da onde veio esse problema? A problemática tem que vir da intervenção, porque é isso que dá sentido à educação física. O que dá sentido à educação física é essa intervenção social que ela é. Então, os problemas, as problemáticas, os problemas da investigação têm que ser ancoradas nessa problemática que vem da intervenção. Eu não posso sobrepor uma problemática.
Deixa eu só parar por aqui e fazer. That his point that that should be, and he is specifically sociology, should not the sociology guy come to physical education field and say sociology is important for physical education. Should be the opposite. The physical education should say, we need you, guy from sociology, to solve that point. And then I ask, who is we in the physical education? Then it's the teachers, the guys who are the pedagogical practitioners. These are the people who should define the problems, and you should interact with these people and then construct physical education. Although, if not like that, this is not going to be physical education. This is going to be physiology doing something related to human movement on neuroscience and sociology, but not building this or constructing this physical education area.
If I take David Martin, what Walter is saying, my interpretation is, you said, if I'm a physiologist and I do a nice job in my lab, but that work doesn't mean anything to the coach, what use? So you said in our talk that it is important to have an agreement, it is important to have closing the gap between the coach and the physiologist. And most of all, the problems is, you said in your talk, improving performance. That's the problem. Walter is saying the same thing, but he's using the tradition of physical education. What is our tradition? Our tradition is pedagogical practice. We want to teach people, we want to change their lives. We want to transform them. That's our end. If you agree upon that, how can Benoit, how can David, how can Howie can sit together and design projects that we can
and at
Richter.
sorry, if I may complete, or maybe what I understand about Walter's talk is that pedagogical practice, this practice would be the basis for interdisciplinary approach. I don't know if you agree with that, because if you have some basis, and then the theory about this pedagogical practice would be built by this interdisciplinary approach, rather than have a multidisciplinary approach, and then put this all together in the, like, for example, for undergrad or graduate students.
That's never going to happen. I mean, it might sound nice, but there's an American phrase that the horse has left the barn, or the train has left the station. I mean, we'll never go back to that in any of our lifetimes. Whether that's good or bad, it doesn't matter. We have to figure out how to keep our departments so that they have what's known as centrality, meaning we do something that makes us unique and worthwhile on our campuses. And if we don't do that, then we will not be in existence over the next 25 to 50 years. So it sounds, we just can't go back to what physical education was. That's not going to happen. Whether it's right or wrong, doesn't matter.
Do you think to legitimate physical education it's necessary to have a science? So, for example, kinesiology being understood as a science, of course. Do you think it's necessary, or to have a knowledge of this pedagogical practice wouldn't legitimate physical education in the university, for example?
It's interesting, you know, I think sometimes it's an artificial divide, because in one word you're saying, do we need kinesiology, and it's got ology in the word, so it's the science. But then you say we should just have pedagogy, which ends in the same Latin end. So pedagogy is the scientific study of education. So for me, I don't understand why there needs to be a battle between pedagogy and kinesiology. Both are science. The pedagogy is the science of education, and what we're saying is with the kinesiology is the science of movement. So for me, they're the one thing. I mean, we wouldn't be having this argument about mathematics. So someone can do a mathematics degree, and some people will come out and teach mathematics, and some people will come out and do research and do pure mathematics. But we wouldn't say that the pedagogy of mathematics has to be in a separate department to the pure mathematics. So for me, what unites us is movement, and the pedagogy of movement is a part of that, not something separate.
Can I just put, I totally agree, and isn't in some ways kinesiology is an embodied pedagogy, and you're educating of and through the physical. I mean, and I think where physical education in North America has found trouble is because physical education isn't looked on as embodied pedagogy in multiple sites. It's looked upon as in the singular site of schools, and that's one site of embodied pedagogy. But we have to think, I think, beyond that as well, to be proper critical public pedagogues of the physical, to teach of and through the physical in multiple different sites, be it schools, be it the popular media, be it elite sport, be it everyday life. And so I think Howie's right in a way that we can't go back, but we can certainly pedagogize. Is that a word? That's a word. I made it up. There you go. It's not the first. Kinesiology, we can look back and see what the pedagogical imperatives must be of kinesiological practice.
Just one thing to be fair to Walter, Howie. He said, actually, at one point I missed that we need to find a problem, a common problem, that's not being pursued in other disciplines, which is our own, as you said, which is our own.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, that's quite what I was about to say, Professor Walter. There's a point. There's a point that is still untranslated in Professor Walter's question. He used a metaphor, and he said that kinesiology right now is like a science being constructed from the ceiling, from the roof. And what lacks, well, there's something that is lacking in kinesiology, is that the base. And Professor Alfredo, he said that the base would be the pedagogical practice. Professor Walter said that was the social practice. And that common practice is the physical education. The name, well, whatever, it's not the most wonderful name, but that's the name in the international tradition. And what would be necessary to kinesiology to be constructed from the same base, not from some concept that would be in the roof, not in the base of the profession, the base of the knowledge base.
The ground.
But how he said, sorry, that the base is kind of, it is behavior, it's movement.
Yeah,
David said as well.
But it's not the movement, it's the social practice of the human movement in perhaps sports, perhaps in dance.
But that's one element of it. Surely the base is the kind of the empirical core of kinesiology and physical education is the same thing, in the way I view it. And it's not just the physical base of movement. I mean, I honestly don't know why physical education, as you express it, is privileged in the way that you do. Because I think physical education is maybe not at the ceiling, but it's at the mezzanine level. It's not the empirical base, in my opinion, because that's the corpus, the active corpus, the body.
Sometimes I wonder if we're getting at the real question, because to me the physical education, kinesiology, it's really the same. It's a different name, but historically, and maybe this is where the problem comes, is when degrees have changed from being physical education to being kinesiology, the hard science has tended to dominate and has pushed aside the sociology and these sorts of things. So for me, I think if there is going to be a name change, the problem is not to go from physical education to kinesiology. That's just changing a name. That's no big deal. The challenge is, how do we go, if we do go to kinesiology, but we preserve the whole of it. So we preserve the sociology, we preserve the philosophy, we preserve the history, and we don't let physiology, biomechanics, motor control dominate and marginalise the other things. But for me, if you want to call it physical education, kinesiology, Janet, you can call it whatever you want. It's still...
She has too much trouble already.
But it's the same thing. The question is, how do we preserve the whole of the area?
I think.
Can I ask? But I mean, I'd like to know what your response would be. What your solution would be.
I don't have a solution
for
such a problem, but perhaps not just descriptive research would fulfill such problem. Perhaps some interpretive research, because we have different backgrounds in Brazil and in other countries. So a kind of research, a collective work, a collaborative work, perhaps from you. but not just in descriptive basis. Interpretive research, preserving the context, the background. Perhaps that.
I think Brian has some things.
A surprise.
That's not a surprise, unfortunately, no. But what I want to say, we can hand on a video clip working on this. But what I want to say is a big break with discussion we've just been having. What I'd like to do is to just look at this video clip and see if you recognize what is going on. You see that maybe we need the lights?
Yes.
Can you see it? Okay, that's good. I'll play it again, but I just want to first impression. Lot going on. Yes. You know.
I read.
Watch it again. And what I want you to do is to look at somebody that's down in the left-hand, bottom left-hand corner that comes round, gets hold of 2 or 3 white things and carries them all. Yeah? See where the arrow is? Here it comes. You see, it's got a couple of things in its grip. And it's carrying them off quite effectively. And eventually it's going to eat them. This is a slice of a rat cortex, developing rat cortex. And what happens in development is quite interesting across all mammalian species. Is you get an overproduction of neuron, and you have to have something called naturally occurring cell death, which you just have too many of them. And part of that process of getting rid of dead neurons and dead tissue and all sorts of things, you have another set of organisms in the central nervous system called phagocytes. Yeah? And they are the garbage cleaners, yeah, of the central nervous system. Now, why have I emphasized this point? It's a point that a metaphor that Benoit used about our science, human movement science, kinesiology, physical education, being subjected to phagocyting, yeah, by other disciplines. And it's exactly my experience that this has happened. In the many, many years that I've worked in academia, I've had probably just over 20 PhD students have gone through my hands, if that's the right way of putting it. How many of them have gone on to pursue a career in academia, and specifically in human movement science? 3 out of that total number. Even though I persuaded some of the others that they were good enough and that you could really make a career for yourself, I thought, no, I can do better. Somewhere between 4 or 5 of them went into IT. They were just so good with MATLAB, with animations and things like that. The IT companies in the Netherlands and elsewhere in the world were prepared to take them on. Another 2, possibly 3, went to work for Pixar. You know what Pixar is? Yes. Making 3D animations. Because if you're a biomechanist, then you're like gold dust to them. So I lost those. Others, they went and did jobs that were totally unrelated to academia. But they had skills which were employable in other disciplines in academia. So at least one of them went to work in the Department of Neuroscience. Another one went to work in the Department of Anatomy. And just 3 of them that I know of went on and pursued a career in human movement science. I think, what the hell am I doing? And I'm trying to get these students to take this discipline, take whatever you want to call this field of study, take it further. And I'm not doing it. Is it my failing? Or is it something that other people experience as well? That we train, because human movement science covers such a vast range of topics and subjects, that you're making people skillful in one or more of those areas because that's what they need for their PhD, for example. and become so good at it, they're attracted to other disciplines, to big business, to so it does worry me about that. I'm sorry, this is not intended for public consumption, so I can't get rid of it. So anyway, that was a... I feel that I gave my talk the other day. It was full of pessimism, full of blackness. And here I am again, making everything feel heavy. But, you know, I like to issue warnings and sorry?
Tell a joke.
Tell a joke. You want to hear a joke?
No. Yeah.
Do you want to hear an Irish joke?
Yeah.
You won't understand it, I don't think, unless you understand an Irish accent, or at least a Dublin accent. Have I got permission to tell a joke? This woman, this Irish woman, is pregnant. And it's found out... You know it, do you? No, she's pregnant with twins.
I'm scared.
And...
Irish.
Yeah. So David, it's nothing to do with you. Don't get worried about it. So it's really nice ending. And she's rushed into hospital as she approaches the date of delivery. And she's taken into the delivery room. While she's in the delivery room, expecting her twins, she falls unconscious. And she wakes up sometime later, a few hours later, and there's an obstetrician looking down on her. And she looks at her and says, "Where the hell am I?" He said, "Well, you're in the delivery room, and you've just delivered your twins." "I've delivered my twins?" "Oh, God, what were they?" "Well, one was a boy, and one was a girl." "A boy and a girl, where are they?" "Well, your brother Patrick came in, and he took them away because he wanted to get them baptized." You know, water on the head. He wanted to get them. "You didn't let that idiot take my two children away and get them baptized. God, what names will he give them?" So the obstetrician said, "Well, he did. He took them away, and they've got names." She said, "What names?" "The girl, what name did she get?" And the obstetrician said, "Denise." And the woman said, "Oh, well, that's not too bad." "And the boy, what name did he get?" The obstetrician looks down and says, "The nephew."
Come on.
And now,
worse.
nothing went wrong with that.
Okay. I did my best. Yeah, that's the first one that came to my head. So did you get the point about phagocyting? About human movement science, about other disciplines, about big business?
Just to make one comment and one question to you. So the comment is, the fact that 80% or 90% of your PhD students get jobs in different areas. I think it's very positive.
You think so?
Yes, I think it's, well, of course we're losing, good person for kinesiology, but at the same time it proves the attractive of the field. So there is this very good point that our PhD students find jobs in related areas, because technology of movement is a related area of kinesiology. And I think it's very, maybe not for the academia, but it's very good for the field. Generally speaking, I think it's a good indicator of the success of kinesiology in disseminating people, in that case, in other places. So I would like to ask a question to Yara, Edson, and the EEFE-USP physical education people here. Back to Brian's point about this move from physical education to movement science. So is it really a question that you're asking yourself today, changing the name of the faculty or some of the department? And if yes, why? And so what is, can you let us know a little bit more about this idea of potentially changing name tomorrow?
I think that Edson can, melhor vocês, destacar mais um statement here.
Well, first of all, let me see if there is some member of the faculty. There is one there.
Turn the video on.
I think it's not that there is a wish to change the name, but in the ways we are doing here is somehow to move from, or is to say, physical education is not very important, this idea. We need to be, I think it is a bit like Brian said, there is this urge to have a sexy title. So biodynamics is good, give us a feel of what we want. But I think there is a combination of things, because one cannot only look at the school level. There is a pressure in the university for us to be seen, for us to be a good department, to be a good school. And what is to be a good school is a question of rankings. You mentioned that, rankings. So, I went to Lancaster to work with Brian. When I come back, I met our pro-rector who gave me the money to go there, and I congratulate, I thank him, and he said, no thanks. I just want you and your school to be in the highest level of the ranking. How to do that? Well, the criteria today, which is being applied, is based upon international publications and international papers. And these papers need to be with certain impact factor. Which means that people like Walter, maybe Alfredo, anyway, who publish books, for instance, good books, good material, will not be evaluated as good as Marcos or even I, who publish more papers than books, because the criteria does not privilege them. So that is the urge, which means that biodynamics is the thing to do. David said at one point in his talk, if poetry gives us a lot of money, gives us the rankings, poetry will be the thing here. Well, poetry will never be that, but just to say. So we did a change here. Our master before was Master of Physical Education, the degree. Your PhD was PhD in Physical Education. Now is PhD in Science. Now is Master in Science. What is happening here is that, and here in other departments, in other universities, is that those who not meet the criteria, no matter how good their production is, their intellectual production is, they are being put aside from the system. It is not just a question of changing the name, but it's a question of how the criterion is applied and which criterion it's being used. It's kind of schizophrenic sometimes. If I publish 2 papers in 3 years in science and do only that, if I publish 2 papers in science in 3 years, I will be out of the program. Because I need to do 300-400 points in 3 years, and 2 papers in science would give me 160 points. So I would not be good to advise students in postgraduate programs. So I think the thing is more complex and involves a lot of politics and other things that Brian tried to show us and warn us, I think. I don't know if I was clear.
So are the plans to make a change, a name change?
I think there is a plan to do our postgraduate program only biodynamics. Just biodynamics. Which means that social culture studies, pedagogical studies would have to find another place, somewhere else. And this is happening. Many researchers in the pedagogy subfield, the pedagogy area, are moving to education. Friends of mine, Yara, Eloisa, they are moving to other departments.
So, what happens if they move to education? Don't they have the same? Don't they have the same criteria that they need to publish publication? They need to have articles.
Yes, but the criteria is discussed by the community, and they discuss the quality of the production. They don't just take a number, an impact factor, and put it there.
So it's different for each faculty?
Yes.
Yeah. That's factor area.
Okay.
Yeah.
But not factor, it's the area, the physical education area, because you works more on this area.
So the discussion almost isn't about physical education, about kinesiology, it's about the criteria. Because if you can change the criteria to have some qualitative aspects, as in education, then you don't have the same problem.
Yeah, but to get to that, you have to have a discussion of what is physical education, what it produces, whether or not this is related to kinesiology. That's why all this is very important.
I think you can have both, not in terms of the names, I'm leaving the name, but during my research career, I have studied the most unimportant things for 32 years. So I study people doing this, I study people doing that. Maybe 13 people in the world care about that. But when I meet people, they don't really, and I tell them I'm in kinesiology. And then they ask me, what does that mean? I don't tell them, oh, I've published in the journal Science, or I do this. I say, oh, it used to be called physical education. A light bulb goes off inside of their head, and they immediately want advice from me, whether it's training for a marathon, whether it's their child is trying to learn how to hit a baseball, and we don't take advantage of that. I mean, we could really do a lot to become very comfortable in, at least who I am, and not have to worry about whether my research is understood or valued. That's a different issue. But we can do a much better job promoting what we do if, in fact, and I think David made this point in a much more global way. If we actually went out and promoted those aspects of movement and sport that our society wants to learn about. So I give talks to parent sports groups about what's important about when an 11-year-old child plays in sport. They don't need to know that I don't study that, but I've learned about it through my undergraduate education and a little bit in graduate school. So I don't come and talk to them about this stuff and this stuff, but I use my physical education knowledge, and when I walk out of there, that group of parents thinks better of physical education. So I think we need to have a concerted effort to take advantage of the inherent interest in movement and sport to make what we do to be valued more. And that then will change criteria. But we worry about the criteria, which we'll always have to worry about, but I think we can do a much better job of showing the value of what we do within the context of our society and culture. And we don't do that well enough. So then we get driven by the culture, but maybe your dean, or whoever that person is called, would be thrilled if there would be an article on you in the San Paulo newspaper on the work you're doing in the community, even though it's not considered research. So there are ways we can change the evaluation system if we take advantage of what people are really interested in. They're interested in how we can help themselves and their children do a better job in movement and sport. In what David does, it's ready-made for that. I mean, people really want to perform better, whether they're 8, 9, or 10, or whether they want to go to the Olympics. Oh.
Well, you are a sensible guy. You do not like to come here to be a team.
You wouldn't want me.
But I think the same thing happened in the US. It's not Brazil. I mean, I think the only one who has more experience as feeling that is Andrews. Maybe how he has his experience as demonstrating this problem. But Andrews is more closer to this problem as he's from sociology. And you were mentioned that this kind of behavior happens also in the US and also in Australia, although that they doesn't have sociology. He expelled the sociology guys from his building, his parents' building.
Right. I mean, I think that the other people on the panel, perhaps, they're aware of the division and they've benefited from it, even though they're a bit guilty about it. You know, a bit about the fact that it's happened. I mean, I've still got a job. I'm a professor at the university, but we all have to fight, but we have to fight for different things in the socio-cultural area. If you go along the route that it looks like you're heading, that area will have to fight day in, day out for its very existence. And that's something I think you want to avoid. And how you avoid that is, God, how do we avoid it? I mean, we open discussions like this and recognise collectively, as I think the panel has, that we have to have this comprehensive physical education or a comprehensive kinesiology. It can't be over-specialisation in this or this. Otherwise, as Benoit says, ultimately they lose by losing us. But that's a long-term catastrophic vision. We're too concerned with short-term gains and benefits. We have to look at the bigger picture now and in the future to maintain the credibility of a comprehensive academic project. And, you know, I'm not alone in this. Every department you go in the United States, if they have socio-cultural, it's very, very, very minor. And but as I said at the end of my talk, one way that we can do it, rather than having people like me moaning about it constantly, because we'll do that, is to make sure that the work we do can't be ignored. You know, if you score the goals, they've got to pick you. Isn't that the football metaphor? You know, if you do the work that, not compromising your ontological, epistemological beliefs, political beliefs, to kind of compromise, but if you do work that matters, then I believe that you'll be viewed as being important to the future of the field as a whole.
Should we be more specific to them? I mean, strategies of
the type of work to do.
Yeah, I mean, how to act, how to be well, how you did that.
Okay, I'll give you an example, right? I've been at Maryland 10 years. My dean, for 9 years, barely knew my name. Okay? He walked past me in the corridor. No. And then I wrote a research grant to do some work looking at basically the relationship between physical activity and health in Baltimore neighborhoods. Okay, specifically the contrast between white affluent neighborhoods and poor black neighborhoods. Okay, and he got wind of this, and I got the grant, and suddenly he's emailing me, David this, David that, you know. Suddenly my credibility, yeah, exactly, my credibility went up. Not because he knew what I was doing, because if he really knew what I was doing, it's interpretive work, you know. I don't think he'd really like it, but he thought, well, that's it. That's, you know, it got his attention. Now, maybe I threw in strategically a few, you know, adjectives to do that, nouns to do that, health, underserved communities, translational research. If you do that, then perhaps you're bringing attention to the fact that what you're actually doing is of value to these administrators, is contributing to this public health agenda. Now, I don't think I've changed really what I've done, apart from framing it somewhat slightly differently. Now, I don't think that's a good... I'm not saying that's all you do, but just think about the type of work you do and what kind of... I do think, ideally, you'd like your work to have some type of social impact. How do you do that? That's not very easy, but in socio-cultural studies, surely we can generate work that does have social impact. Doesn't mean it's measurable, but you know, in the short term or the medium term, but we have to believe that it's going to make a difference in the work that we do, the knowledge we generate, the pedagogical engagements that we have, and the lives that we touch. All right, that's all I can do, I guess.
For those of you that want to go on to be professors, and this will sound very old-fashioned, because I'm old, but one of the biggest effects you're supposed to have is to make the students that you will be teaching, to make them smarter. And you know, we sometimes forget about that. We think about all these other things, but you're supposed to alter the minds of the students that you will be teaching if you go on to be a professor. And that's a wonderful thing to do, assuming we can do it well. And I'm firmly of the belief that if I do a good job studying the things that I'm interested in, that will make me a better teacher, because that intellectual enthusiasm will somehow change their minds. And they will become smarter, whatever that means. And we sometimes forget that. We're still in the business, bad word to use, of education. And we can't lose sight of the fact that one of our important roles is to make the next set of undergraduate students smarter than we are. That's an important thing to do. And if we just try to do things to sort of go with the current winds, meaning change what we do because administrators might feel better about it, the government might like it better. We can't lose sight of the most important thing that we do, is we make the next set of 18 to 22-year-old young adults, we're supposed to make them smarter. And I'm firmly of the belief that I can make them smarter because I'm still enthusiastic about being a professor. And so even though what I'm studying has no societal impact, it's intellectually rigorous. I think it is. Maybe it's not. But I think it's intellectually rigorous, and then my students get challenged by that intellectual rigor. And that's a really good thing. That's why it's important for people to study philosophy. It's hard. Even though it might not have the same kind of societal impact it had in the 18 and 1900s. It's still intellectually rigorous, even though it doesn't bring in money. And so we can't lose sight of that. So I'd hate to see us decide to mold our careers too much worrying about short-term gains and forget what our long-term goal really is.
Yeah. Okay, Mike. Well, I prepared a short message. Can I read it?
No.
Now he's showing his side.
His New York side. New York.
For all, we didn't prepare a grand finale for this moment. No. And for different motives. First, this moment didn't begin in this seminar. Yes, Harry Bergson wrote about this, the duration. It's going on from different ideas coming from interesting researchers, academics all over the world, through their papers, books, ideas, and experience. 2. The seminar, part of the Ephysis project, don't finish today. I think it will continue here and all over the world with the help of our guests and you who understood the meaning of this initiative or this movement. 3. I didn't believe, never, that there is one way for all. Sometimes this question appeared in this week, but I don't think that this is important, really. 4. We have a project. This is important. We have persons near and far away from us who believe that having a common project is important to rethink possibilities to this field, but with the proposition to regain these spaces and times for meetings. 5. And for me, for some, maybe, this is a great opportunity to do better our lives, at work better, but in international meetings, be it in our day-to-day activities at university, in our classrooms with students, other colleagues. My proposition is collective action, networks, meetings to find ways to gather to the questions and problems that we all face. In spite of 4 difficulties in our universities today, I believe in us, in the university, but not any university, in the meetings that we do and believe in life. We can have good and happy meetings in our lives, said Spinoza, Bento de Spinoza. Thank you for what happened here in the week. Without you, it would not be possible. Thank you for which is yet to come. Cheers.
Will give.
The winner is David Andrews.
Howard Selassie.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Vilma. That's very important. Thank you very much.
Well, we have a team now. We have a team.
Can we open it up?
Yes. We have our team. We have also our coaches. Do you see who are the coaches?
Wow. Wow.
But there are the coaches as well. The entrepreneur, you must have the manager.
I'm not the referee.
No, no.
Muito obrigado. Quanto esposa agora eu ganho no lado?
Oh, how beautiful.
Where's my whistle?
I didn't bring my cards with me.
Okay, guys, so now you two here. How are you going?
How about the bench?
Come on, come on. Number 9. The double scorer. Oh, you're number 10.
That was Ronaldo's number, right? Ronaldo was 9.
Okay, that's a team.
O Walter não põe a camiseta, que isso?
That was my need.
This is not going to be on Facebook or YouTube.
Wait. Walter, okay, come on. Go. Okay.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Muito obrigado. Wow. It's random.